All right. Hello. Sorry, people that have been waiting. But now I am live on the Sunday mid-afternoon. Well, no, not mid-afternoon. That would be noon, barely afternoon. Gaytriarchy. I'm here with Brian Martinez of Honey Badger Radio, who I'm going to get to meet in person in a bit over 2 weeks, which is cool. And I don't think Spacepan is joining us. So once again, we're having one of these Sunday streams where it's just me and him. He's doing it from his phone. So unfortunately, we're going to hear a little bit of background noise. I don't know. Not, a super big deal, whatever. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the ICMI and stuff because ultimately I'm really excited about this. I have never met in person almost anyone who's there, except for I'm sure well over 10 people who are going to be there. Some of whom very well. Spacepan, for example, my co-host, who is probably my best friend on all of YouTube, but I have never actually met him in person. So, that's going to be cool. And yeah, I mean, there's just a ton of other people that I haven't met.
Yeah.
And I don't even really remember. I don't even know if I've looked at the speaker list. So I'm stoked about that. The only person that I know who's going to be there that I have met in person, unless I'm somehow missing something, is going to be Benjamin Boyce. But other than that, I don't think I know anyone in person. So
Yeah. Have you met Benjamin Boyce in person, really?
yeah, multiple times.
Are you like out by him? Is that why? Because I know he's like in. Doesn't he live kind of close to Evergreen College?
Yeah, he lives close to there, and I'm in the Pacific Northwest as well. So we met and had mid-afternoon lunch one time because he was in where I am for a Jordan Peterson lecture, and then we hosted an event together in the summer of 2018, back when that was right at the peak of the whole blood sports drama. And it was this kind of funny thing. I mean, it's not really funny, but looking back on it, it's kind of funny. But that stuff was madness. And another person who showed up was Mundane Matt. And Mundane Matt kind of wanted to talk about it a whole bunch, and I didn't really, it was like, yeah, that's kind of what I don't want to talk about. But I mean, I wasn't like rude about it, but I just remember Mundane Matt being like, it's just something. They just want to get money. It's not a big deal. And then very soon after that, they totally came after him really, really hard. And because I was like, I don't know, dude, I think you got to be a little careful with this. There's something weird going on. And then so yeah, but whatever. I don't have any ill will towards Mundane Matt. Like, I'm not one of these people that's going to be like, man, yeah. No, it's just something that happened. And Benjamin never got wrapped up in that stuff because he doesn't really communicate with a whole bunch of YouTubers. Like, he's not on the YouTube scene so much. He's more of the
yeah. He kind of like he just focuses on what he like, his business and his content and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've talked to him about that, and one of the things that I've noticed from him that I said I think is a good thing is that his niche is the actually focusing on things like academia and the skeptical leftists and stuff, and he does it very, very nicely. And like, I remember when I first met him, I was kind of like, yeah, the reason that I sort of started being a YouTuber was I had a lot of free time. I was living as a live-in caretaker, and I looked at this stuff, and I was watching people like Milo Yiannopoulos, and I was like, what he is saying is mostly true, actually, but he's extraordinarily mean. And I'm not saying that there's no purpose for that, because at the time, that was necessary because the feminists were so mean and so overconfident, and they thought that they were invincible. They thought that they could be as big of crazy bullies as they possibly could and then still pretend that they were the nice people. They're like, no, we just don't want people to tell rape jokes, so we're going to ruin your life. We're nice. And then Milo was like, no, you're not nice. You're really, really mean. And I'm going to be mean back to you. And I'm going to show you the mirror. And you're not going to have anything to say back to that. And that was true. He pushed the Overton window in that way. He didn't know, people, a lot of the Antifas will say like, oh, the alt-right changed the Overton window to make racism acceptable. No, it was more like he just changed the conversation when everybody had to admit that the left is mean, because he kind of did them one better. But I was like, I can be a lot nicer than and also explain things in a little bit more in depth, and I like the video format to do that. So that's sort of what I'm going to be doing. And then so I was like, okay, so I think on the scale of from meanness to nice, there would be like Milo Yiannopoulos would be like the meanest, and then there'd be like someone like Sargon, and who's slightly nicer but still pretty mean a lot of the time, and then someone like me who's slightly nicer than Sargon, and then Benjamin is even more nice. And I was like, yeah, and that really works for you. Like, you are nicer than I could probably ever be if I tried. And I think that's really, really effective. And then you do your own thing and you stick to that. And I think that is what you should do. And his whole channel was just hit with that partial demonetization thing that they do to everyone. And it's just like, okay, see, they will come after literally everybody. Like it's not about how you say it, it's about what you say. And so
well, I don't care about tone. I don't care about how nice somebody is. I care about the substance of what they're saying. So because the people who I guess advocate for or make these kind of arguments about the tone or whether or not someone is coming across as mean, they often are they're extremely like let's say they have an extreme amount of disgust towards you, and they're just trying to use these tools to shut you up. There's been this argument, this Twitter feud, whatever you want to call it, between Christy Winters and Kevin Logan and friends and supporters of Christy Winters, and they've been arguing with Karen, myself, Hannah, and Allison for, I'm not kidding, at least for like a week and a half now. And their bad faith arguments just never end. Like, they're completely out of arguments, and all they can do is just call us racist and sexist. And essentially the accusations they make is that we are being mean because whatever it is their logic can come up with. Obviously, none of it's true. And so there's no need for me to even like have to create a defense against it because they're just assertions. They're completely empty. But my point is, the goal of those assertions that they make is to make us appear as though we are really mean people that hate, women and non-white men, and we're homophobes and so on. And as a result, they're using that sort of making this moral dichotomy so that other people who are, don't know what the conversation's about, they're just looking on, or they're drones like them that haven't actually like looked at what our positions are and what we're talking about, and take on the criticisms that we have for, feminism and like leftist identity politics and political correctness in general. And they're hoping that those people will simply see their assertions that we're, bad, immoral, hateful people, and then it will turn the neutral parties against us, which is why men's rights activists, they have had for, many years now, they've had these terrible reputations. And the thing is that what they're doing is extremely mean bullying, what they are doing, but they cloak it with the benevolence and the fact that they, and empathy and all these ideas that they care about people and they're just trying to protect us from the mean, bad MRAs. And so it ends up that, I'm at the point now where I can appreciate someone being nice, as you put it, or polite, or just considerate and cordial, and wants to have a productive discussion. Guys like Benjamin Boyce, that do that, or I think I'm real, or whatever. They're not interested in scoring political points, dunking on their enemies, but rather they want to get to the bottom of things, and so they're willing to talk to the other side. I'm willing to talk to the other side. I've had really aggressive people on the left on the show.
Oh, I
that
saw.
have tried. Yeah, you saw that. Yeah, but the fact is that it's gotten to the point now where I'm beyond caring about whether or not a person is nice, and I look way past that, and I'm at the point where I'm only looking at the crux of their arguments, if they have any. Because there are people who are really nice, but they're not saying anything of substance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that annoys me about as much as, and I'll give you an example. Sometimes Joe Rogan does that.
Mm-hmm.
He says nice sounding things that have no substance. They're just empty. They're empty, devoid statements. Brittany Simon, who's a feminist that I've talked to many times and I've had on the show as well. Brittany Simon says lots of really nice, flowery things, but there's nothing there. So I'm like, well, I can't use this for anything. It's like you've given me, a cake and there's nothing in it. It's all icing, and I don't want to eat that. So. And on the other side, I've seen people who are they say really mean things, even things that I think are they may have like dangerous conclusions, but the logic and the argument is actually quite solid, and I appreciate that more, even if I disagree with their conclusions, because I know that there's actually something to it. There's some substance.
Yeah, you know what they're actually trying to get at and what they really think inside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For example, again, Joe Rogan had on a guy named, he's a very well-known Harvard professor, kind of a black activist, out-and-out Marxist guy named Cornel West.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Cornel West, yeah. And he had Joe Rogan, he was on Joe Rogan's show. And I was listening to this podcast because I know Cornel West is a far-left Marxist.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to hear what Joe was going to say. And so on the one hand, I was really annoyed with Joe because he never challenged Cornel on anything. In fact, he spent the whole podcast kissing his ass, even though he's had on lots of people who had criticisms of the left, and he agreed with them on his podcast. It makes me think, well, does Joe believe in anything, or is he just being nice to everybody? Which means there's no substance. And then on Cornel's side, he does put forth his case for socialism, and I understand what his logic is, although I still think he's wrong. So, and not just wrong in terms of his conclusions, but wrong in terms of his methodology. But I do see the methodology. He's not afraid to make that plain, so I can respect that. So
yeah. By the way, if you have not already, please do hit that like button, help us in the algorithm, get a few more people watching. That would be cool. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I would say though that it is a very important necessity for everybody in the rational thinking world, which would include, definitely the audience of Joe Rogan as compared to the audience of what's a leftist podcast that is popular.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if there's any podcast that has regular guests, but there's like David Pakman show. There's the Majority Report. There's that guy. I forget his name. Secular Talk. Yeah, those are three that jump up.
Secular Talk, maybe. I'm trying to think of like somebody who is just awful, and like
Vosh.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, he's pretty awful. He's He's a communist, basically.
Oh, okay.
So,
But like, somebody like Anita Sarkeesian or something, like, but it's not like
yeah,
anybody ever
sure.
watches her show, but she still has it. Like, I know, like, it's important to have those conversations just so that we are exposed to these people, and criticizing people for not
Sure.
pushing back too much. I mean, yeah, it's frustrating as hell, especially when you're pretty positive that they could, but at the same time, I mean, they don't really do that to the people that we do agree with either.
I don't know about that. See, my wife said the same thing. She said, "Well, Joe doesn't really do that with anyone," and I said, "No, I've seen him do it with Tim Pool, for example." And
Okay.
I would say that Tim Pool he's definitely a center left guy. He's not, and again, I think that the left right dichotomy is a bit
Irrelevant.
convoluted. Like it's a little bit irrelevant. Yeah, it's a bit convoluted though, because I think that the average person's understanding of left and right it doesn't line up with what I believe to be reality. And I say this as someone who used to say, "Oh, I'm on the left," and then over a period of time, I really started to think about what all of these terms meant, and I've come to the conclusion that a lot of people don't really get it. But with that in mind, because I think that's a whole other bag of worms, or can of worms.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I have seen Joe push back on Tim Pool. I've seen him push back on Steven Crowder. I've seen him do it to other sort of right wing, people. I wouldn't say Tim Pool's right wing, but like people who have, let's say, non-progressives. How about
Sure,
that? I think that's actually better.
Okay.
Non-progressives, because there are people who are on the left that are critical of progressives.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah.
So what I would say though is that when we have one of these relatively rare appearances, like you normally. Like it's somewhat surprising that Cornel West went on Joe Rogan. It's not what you see every day on Joe Rogan. And when you have situations like that, it is important to have those token guests that you normally wouldn't have, that are normally not getting a chance to communicate their crappy ideas to the masses. And
Sure.
so it's a very valuable thing to have somebody at least be cordial with them, so that they don't leave the conversation thinking, "Oh, I'm never doing that again." And did you watch my video called Joe Rogan versus every MRA?
Yeah, it was a while back. We responded to that too, because he made it was a response video to his jokes about MRAs, right?
Yeah, which are so dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, he still does that bit. He did it like very recently, where he said, "We have all the rights.
It's so
we have
dumb.
them all." And so this is what I'm talking about. Like, look, it's not. I don't care that much if Joe never, really like accepts that. He can't stay neutral on everything. Like, there's just incontrovertible evidence for certain arguments that, these aren't a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
They are simply true or they are not true.
Yeah.
And this isn't across the board, but this is definitely on some things. And I think men's issues is one of those things where he takes a jab at men. He blames them for things.
Yeah.
He leaves women's part to play in history when it comes to all things negative that have happened, only holds men accountable. And then he reverses that and talks about Phil Hartman and how bad it was for him.
Yeah, it's like Joe might as well sort of be saying, well, guys, you have all the rights. I mean, you're an adult. It's not like you're going to get circumcised again.
Yeah, exactly. But, again, one day maybe he'll get an MRA on. I think that what it is this. I think Joe Rogan, and I don't, we don't have to keep talking about Joe Rogan after this, but I think that he's an example of the larger sort of political commentary on YouTube that is not trying to overtly push an agenda, because I don't think Joe is trying to push anything. I think that he's just like a naturally curious person. He wants to talk to different people. I don't consider him to be an intellectual powerhouse. He's a guy that has a degree of common sense. He's a really curious guy, and that means in general that will mean that he'll be exposed to more ideas, which is good for his overall balancing out. The thing about men's issues, the thing about the gender discussion, and by extension, the entire discussion on the political spectrum, because unfortunately, I think that the gender question is related to the political question in sort of a low resolution way, in like a large picture way. But that's not going to happen until the Overton window on gender discussions shifts enough that people can talk about men more.
Yeah.
And bring them into the conversation in a way that exists outside of the feminist lens, which is the only way people are allowed to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
So that means that the men's rights has to go mainstream. But on the plus side, though, I think that's where it's going.
I do too.
And I have a lot of evidence to back it up, that I've seen. So that is a good thing.
Well, the other thing
people are asking about my testicular cancer. I actually have more testing to do tomorrow. I have to go to the hospital.
Oh.
But so far, I am cancer free, but I'm not a survivor. I had to we have to go another year of testing, and then if there's no change, then I'm considered a survivor.
Oh my God! Well, good luck. It sounds I'm
knocking
on wood a little bit for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was just gonna say, with Joe Rogan, I mean, protecting his reputation in Hollywood so that he can get all the different types of guests that he does, I think is not just valuable for his show, but I think it's valuable for everybody. And he does have this reputation of being this anti-feminist comic. And I know he does, because I knew feminists that were like big feminists, and it was because things like he's good friends with Jim Norton, who annihilated Lindy West in that one debate. He's certainly done a lot of making fun of feminists and all sorts of stuff like that. And so I do think that there is just a little bit of career politics in terms of trying to make sure that people don't overwhelmingly think that he's on this one side, because he's trying to be a little bit more neutral, so he wants to balance it out. But let's not talk about him anymore.
Hence the Overton window thing I was talking about, where there's it's funny because with some things he's willing to go there, but that's because it's not as bad for his brand or as risky for his job. So consider the fact that he's had Alex Jones on at least twice, and they've talked about everything from interdimensional elves to demons to all kinds of crazy stuff on the show. Whether or not the moon landing was real, they've gone there. They've talked about flat Earth. They talked about all of that, and that he has no problem with, because you can talk about those things and keep your job. But I don't think you can actually full on talk about men's issues without it getting undue attention on you. But anyway, that being said, actually you asked me a question about, well, you didn't ask me, but you were talking about the ICMI.
Yeah.
And I wanted to tell you who was going to be there.
Yeah.
So
please do, because I just bought my ticket. I haven't really been looking at the schedule because, ultimately, I have a lot going on, and it's the schedule is only one important aspect for me. Ultimately, I'm not going to be someone that's going to show up and be blown away by all the speeches, no matter how great they are. There's probably going to be one or two that really stands out, but at the same time, I'm mostly pretty aware of the issues. Of course you are. So it's mostly really about meeting a bunch of friends and meeting people that I've always, admired and things like that. And getting to ask questions in person and stuff. So,
Well, my goal, and so at least in part, I was the one who was pushing that this be done in Chicago. Actually, mostly because I live here.
Yeah.
This is home. And we didn't want to go overseas again, the Badgers, because
thank you.
This is the fifth, ICMI. The first one that the Honey Badger Radio is actually putting on. But the fifth ICMI, and all the previous ones, well, except for the first one, which was in Detroit. But who the hell wants to go to the Detroit? But apologies to any Detroitians that might be in the audience. But this is after the Detroit conference, which actually received a bomb threat, and that one was kind of crazy. Although I didn't go to that one. Then we went to the UK. Since then, we've been to the UK twice and Australia once. And while I enjoyed those trips, I was like, can we not do 8 hours / 16? I think the flight to Australia was like 16 hours. Can we not do those for a little while and have another one here in North America?
Mhm.
Because there are people who want it in Pakistan. There are
Oh my
people who
God.
want it in Europe, like in Germany or something. Oh yeah, because in India, the men's movement is really big there.
Yeah.
And Pakistan is like a nice, like sort of, in between. Well, Pakistan, Israel, whatever you want to call it, but like Pakistan is where they were thinking. But I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to Pakistan for an ICMI.
Wait, do you mean Palestine?
No, I'm sorry, Pakistan, not Palestine.
Well, no, because you said Israel. I
got my I know. I got my things confused. I meant Pakistan,
Okay.
not Palestine.
Yeah, I figured. I also said India. Okay, yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. So it's right there by India. But my point is, so I was the one who said we should have in Chicago, and I proposed that the reason is, first of all the cities, the major cities where you could have it, Chicago is in the middle of the country, so it's relatively convenient for people, regardless of where they are in the United States or even in Canada, to get to, because it's a nice centralized point. So if we had it, say, in LA, people that lived on the East Coast would have a really hard time getting there, and vice versa. So I said, let's split the difference, and I think we should do Chicago. And then it was a toss-up between Chicago and Philadelphia, but fortunately it turned out to be Chicago. Another thing that I thought would be a good idea, and Allison and I talked about this at length, is that we don't make this men's conference just about men's issues and just have men's rights activists there. And the reason for it has a few layers. Number one, there is the idea that we could create more interest in the conference if we had people that were there that were not MRAs, but have interests that are kind of, parallel to or adjacent to men's issues.
They're MRA-ish.
Yeah, kind of. Like either in that they are, anti-feminist, but more than that is that they are interested in men's issues, or they talk about
Whoa.
men, or they're what?
Brian, you're breaking up hard.
I am?
Not anymore.
Hold on. Not anymore? You know what I'll do is I'm going to turn on my Wi-Fi, because it's probably my 5G, and it might not be entirely reliable. So give it some time. I apologize. Should I repeat myself?
Okay.
Looks like I'm on the network. Okay. So anyway, I was saying, people who are that make content, or they are involved with other issues that are important to men's rights in a tangential way. For example, if you are a free speech advocate, then that is relevant, because if MRAs can't talk about issues, then we can't get any help, right? So it's sort of related. So you'd create interest through the guests, because there'd be people who are fans of people but don't follow MRAs, and you let them know this is related, and you expose those people that don't do a lot of men's rights content, you expose them to men's issues. So there's a bit of a networking thing that happens. And maybe we can exchange ideas. Like, for example, I got this idea from when I went to the last conference, and this woman named Deanna Lorraine showed up to the men's conference. And Deanna Lorraine is known, well, she calls herself the Red Pill Dating Coach. And I watched a couple of her shows, and essentially she is a conservative woman, like a tradcon woman, that wants to try to bridge the gap between men and women. But she's not entirely knowledgeable on the history of feminism and like how we got to this point, where there is this big problem. But she did realize that something was wrong. with the way things were. So one of her followers or patrons or something bought her a plane ticket and a ticket to the ICMI in the UK and flew her out there. And she came and she checked it out, and now she's like really interested in this topic. So I thought, well, if it can affect someone like Deanne Lorraine, who, you know, I admit is basically just a tradcon, then and it could shift her opinion on that, then why wouldn't it also have an impact on other people? So I basically said, well, we should, you know, Allison was like, why don't we try to get sort of like, I don't want to call them skeptics, but, you know, like people who are just related to men's issues, you know, that they may not talk about it in the primary, but they talk about other things. And some of them are libertarian political commentators or classical liberal. I hate that term, classical liberal, but classical liberal commentators, or, you know, they're whatever, they're free speech absolutists, they're whatever they are. And if they want to come, then that lets us know that they're kind of interested in the stuff we talk about. And they might come see a few presentations by MRAs who are veterans, have been doing this a long time, and then they take that knowledge on. We network with each other. Then when everyone goes back their separate ways, that informs their future content. So someone like Count Dankula, for example, who's going to be there, he might watch a conference and realize something that he didn't know about men's issues, about feminism, whatever. And then that informs his content going forward. So it's sort of like, we don't need people to call themselves MRAs, right? We don't need them to do that. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in wearing the label like it's some kind of shield that, you know, that tells you what you believe. But if we give people the knowledge, and that stuff, if that knowledge is true, if it comes from a place of truth, then they will absorb it, and it will affect them from that point on. It will inform all of their future decisions, their future conversations, and so it will become a more mainstream idea. So that's basically the goal, you know?
No, that makes perfect sense. They'll all get saved. No,
See, that's not. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but that's not what I. Yeah.
I'm obviously totally joking. But yeah, you know, it's I don't know if I've ever explained my stance on calling myself an MRA to you. I probably have, but I'm gonna just reiterate it. I feel like being an MRA, actually, yeah, we've definitely talked about this. It's not an ideology, and it's not even really that much of a tribalistic label. It's just it's just an action, you know, like, I mean, what I don't like is the stigma that it is supposedly is this tribalistic label. It's like, look, I advocate for the gender specific issues of men and boys. Some of those things are actual rights that men are denied. Therefore, I am a men's rights advocate. Therefore, I am an MRA. If I said otherwise, I would be lying. And I think it's, you know, like, there's this part of me that kind of just wishes people would be like, yeah, you know what? That's entirely logical. You know, like, I don't think Sargon calls himself an MRA, but by my standards, he is, you know? And so it's kind of like, part of me just wishes people would just sort of do that, because maybe if more and more people did, then that whole stigma would disappear. But I understand, you know, and one of the things that I really think is really relevant to bring up, for me as an individual, and hopefully more and more people in the future, but it is true that in terms of the open people, the people who actually, you know, have a platform, there isn't really that many gay male MRAs. There's that one guy in Australia, and he makes videos and stuff, and he's pretty good looking. I forget what his name is, but I was thrilled to find out that he exists the other just a few weeks ago. I didn't even know about him. And there's me and, you know, my friends on YouTube, and there's a few authors who aren't really so active anymore. But other than that, there isn't really that many people that people have heard of. But, you know, I feel like I cannot stress this enough, obviously. I really, really wish that more and more gay men became men's rights advocate, because if gay men advocate for their rights at all ever, then they're an MRA to me. And granted, there's a lot of gay men who are feminists, and so it's like you can't be both. Like that's the only rule.
Yeah.
Because but feminism is an ideology. We're not meninists. We're men's rights advocates. And but the thing,
and also by extension, women's rights advocates. Like we're not ignoring women's issues. We're just not looking at women's issues through the feminist lens, because that changes, that distorts women's issues too much. Let's put it that way. Because imagine looking at men's issues and looking at women's issues like in an objective way is just using your two eyes to look at the data. Using the feminist lens is like using a magnifying glass on women's issues and ignoring men's issues.
Like using
completely.
It's like using a Ouija board.
Yeah, it really is.
But like the thing about gay men and MRAs, and I know this definitely from the friends that I've made, the people who watch my channel very habitually, and a lot of the people, comments I get and everything, when like it's not so difficult to be a gay male MRA. Like it's like I don't think that I get. It's kind of like what the girls say, like I don't think I get nearly so much crap as the men do, or the straight men do, because it's just so easy to dismiss people as neckbeards who can't get a date, and they try. They give me the whole, oh, you must be a neckbeard that lives in your mother's basement. But it's like, no, I just care about these issues, and it has nothing to do with not being able to get a date. In fact, at this point in my life, I'm a little bit embarrassed by how many I used to get, because it kind of got a little bit dangerous for my health. And then also just because, like, I don't think that once a gay guy really gets aware of how destructive feminism is, especially towards gay men, because I mean, I don't want to say especially, that's probably not the right word, but how purely destructive and needlessly destructive, I guess, it is for gay men. For straight men, they have to deal with women, and they have to, if they're a younger guy, like there's all sorts of guys, I'm sure, who, in their late teens or early 20s, they briefly become MRAs, or kind of MRA-ish, and then they start dating, and it all falls apart. Like it's like, oh, I kind of want a girlfriend more than I want to stick up, because that's what young people are like. They care most about getting dates and less about their principles. And they haven't, it's hard to be very principled when you're young, because you're changing your mind all the time. And it's like you come across something that you think is true, but you also come across things that are demonstrably untrue that you also think are true for a second, and you're shifting it around in your head. So but like I think that when a gay guy gets, red pilled, I don't think that it can ever really be undone, because there's just no reason for it. It's like, wait, I have never gotten anything good from feminism. The only gay guys who are really, really, really feminists are guys that, either it's some sort of part of their job, like they're, work for some sort of nonprofit that's a LGBTQIA center or something, or they work on behalf of the Democratic Party in some way or another. And there's a lot of those guys out there.
And we're talking not about just like, a gay man, but rather a gay lobbyist, a gay activist. There's a difference, right?
Yeah, I tend to call them gay church ladies.
Okay.
Because and every gay guy I know, every time they're like, oh my god, it's so true, because those are the guys that, like, now they're just like Orange Man bad, but it used to be like they were the ones that were like gay marriage now, and I was like, honestly, I don't really care. Like, can we get
Yeah.
civil unions that like will make it so that the next of kin status is there? Because
Sure.
like
Sure.
then maybe the tax breaks, but like,
Or at the very least, like I think what would have been even better, honestly, is to have a conversation about whether or not the government should be involved in marriage at all.
well,
And maybe like they like completely like,
oh, I no,
I
I totally agree with that. But
mhm.
when there is something that some people do want to do and they cannot do it at all, that is something that is a symbolic right that
Yeah,
is being ignored. Now, I totally
yeah,
agree.
I agree. That I think that's when it becomes an activist issue, because it
Yeah.
is it's a symbolic victory that you're after.
Well, and
By the way,
it's not just symbolic. Like, I mean, with the gay community in particular, the next of kin status is actually very important, because when there are, families that have disowned their son, and then they, spend 15 years with their partner, and then he dies, the family can just come in and take all his stuff and stuff like that. That's not cool. Sorry, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say that to your comment about how, you wish there were more MRAs involved. I was just going to say that while there aren't that many MRA content creators that you know of,
there's a lot of fans.
You would be surprised at it's actually quite disproportionate. There's a disproportionate number of gay and bisexual MRAs that show up at these conferences.
Yeah,
so when you go to the ICMI, you're going to be surprised at how many. In fact,
well, I'm not going to be, but a lot of people would be.
Well, you probably wouldn't, yeah. But I mean, like, and there's always at least every year, at least I think I meet at least one or two trans people, trans women that are MRAs as well. And I'm not talking about the really well-known figures like Blair White and Theron Meyer. I mean, just like the people who don't make content, but they're interested in these topics. And also, I was just going to say that another guy who is not an MRA, like he doesn't call himself one, but he's been watching men's issues content, specifically HBR, for a while now, and he has a pretty popular YouTube channel that deals with comic books, because he's involved with Comicsgate. And do you know what Comicsgate is, Prince?
Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you knew, but it's just like the latest sort of battle in the culture war, as it were. And his name is Just Some Guy. And he came out as bisexual in like the last video, because he wanted to talk about why he hates the idea of a gay Spider-Man, despite himself being a person who is bisexual. And and I was like, oh, I mean, I heard him, and I was like, oh, okay, like, I mean, I didn't think anything of it, but I'm not surprised, because I think that specifically, gay men. I think that they're starting to move towards men's issues, because they realize that, first of all, men's issues or men's rights content I'm sorry about the dogs, is not about virtue signaling. It's not about feeling good about, being a man. It's not about, using this language to empower people. It's another word I don't like, is empower. It's about, like realizing what the real issues are and like getting to the bottom of them. And it's not an easy process, but it is about really helping people in the long run by identifying the issues and then talking about what we need to do going forward to try to get them addressed. And so I think that more and more gay men are feeling disenfranchised by the current feminist narrative. Now, I'm not saying it's a majority, because we know it's not. It's a long way off, but I noticed that every year we have more people than last time, and we have more gay men and bisexual men, and trans people.
I come into contact with a lot of gay men, even in my blue pill Facebook sphere, which, you're my Facebook friend. I'm connected to quite a lot of people, and it's really interesting the way that because it used to just be like I would be the only one ever talking about any of the stuff, and people would think I was totally weird, or like occasionally I would get a private message from someone being like, yeah, I noticed that they're really, really hostile, and it seems like they just really hate white men, and like I didn't do anything to them and stuff like that, but they were so I don't know, green, like they were so not actually really aware. And then a lot of the time those same guys would say things like that, and then three or 4 months later they'd be posting about how they're showing up to the Women's March or something, and it's like, what? But the thing about these guys and how things have changed is that, like, I've noticed these. Okay, this is an example. When I was one of my big pet peeves is the rewriting of history about the Stonewall movement, in which they have very deliberately and very dishonestly tried to rewrite history to get rid of the white gay men who actually were mostly at Stonewall and led the subsequent gay civil rights movement that started with Stonewall. And what they've tried to do is say, no, it was actually all trans women of color. That's,
I saw that video too.
Yeah. But it's just so blatantly untrue. And the thing is, like, not that many people really knew, and so like when it first came out, I believed it. I didn't have any reason not to believe it. I was like, oh, that's interesting, I can imagine that. And then it's like, no, that's not true at all. But it took me a while. Well, like recently some person that probably knows like over 4,000 or certainly over 2,000, significantly more friends than I do on Facebook, because if you're somebody who was like a total leftist who was into the party scene, plays music, or some sort of status-ish in that type of reality, you're gonna have you're gonna have, but like if you don't have well over 1,000 people on your Facebook friend list, nobody thinks you're cool, and so you'll try to like make all these friends that you don't even know. Like anybody ever says something cool on Facebook, you add them as a friend. That's what those people are like. And so this guy that I don't even know how I know him, I might not even know him at all. He posted some meme that was it was just some stupid crap about, oh yeah, that trans woman of color led Stonewall, all you white gay men, or something like that. And of course I was like, nope, this is untrue. And I started sharing actual data, interviews and stuff. I think I actually did share my video at that moment because it was and the funny thing was there was a few bad apples, there was a few people, but there was at least five or six other guys that were like, yeah, I'm so sick of this crap, blah, 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 blah. Now, not that many of them, I mean, I don't think any of them knew anywhere near as much about it as I did, because, I've done my research on this for a while. But they were very appreciative, and they were just tired of it. They're like, no, this is not true. We know that there's no way that's true. And I was like, yeah, I can prove it's not true. And so that was this Pride. So that was just, maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago. And I was overjoyed to see that. And what I really kind of think it is, what I think that the shift is not just that, like, it's been around for a while. It's made the gay, like, everybody hates the gay community. There's nobody who's happy with it. The intersectionals are never happy with anything that is their MO, and they're going to blame it on the fact that it's all white gay men, blah, 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 blah. That is what they're going to say. But the white gay men are probably more miserable than anybody, because it's like we don't even have a community anymore.
It's almost like intersectionality divides people even within a protected group. But go ahead. You don't.
I would say even more, because they think of the LGBTQ plus community as their safe haven, and so they very deliberately go out of their way to take over gay male spaces, and they're not okay, the thing is, all of the LGBTQ spaces were built by gay men. Period. There's nobody can keep a lesbian bar open. Nobody goes to their little recreation center that has the open mic slam poetry once a month or whatever. Those are things. The only actual spaces where LGBTQ plus people congregate were places that were built on the patronage of gay men, because gay men go out and spend money, and there's more gay men. There aren't really that many lesbians. So you can have one of these bars that is potentially mixed, but there's going to be few women there. And then, once a month or once a week, they have a lesbian night. And honestly, supply and demand, that's what they deserve. Well, the intersectionals were not happy with that. They decided, no, I am a straight girl that decided to call myself non-binary, and I have every right to be in this gay space. I'm even more gay than you are because I'm trans, because I'm non-binary, and I didn't even get a haircut. So, man, the way that these straight women who call themselves non-binary just have started the hostile takeover and trying to control gay men is just completely I don't think there's anything I can compare it to in the absurdity.
Yeah.
I just don't think that there's anything that's that weird that I've ever seen. And so guys are really, really sick of that. And also things like Antifa, the far left, like the people who are more focused on race and immigration and blah blah blah, they hate gay men, and they are not even shy about it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like with Ilhan Omar.
Are they not? Are they not also intersectionals? Isn't Antifa basically?
They are, but they're not.
Yeah.
But they're not very focused on hanging out in the LGBTQ spaces so much.
Sure.
But
I mean, they focus on the race thing, but basically they do to race the same disservice that intersectional lesbians do to LGBT spaces when they essentially.
It's not even the lesbians; it's the straight girls.
So straight girls. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. It's these girls who call themselves non-binary.
The trenders, the concerned fags. Okay.
Yeah,
I got you.
I
apologize. I should have not have said that.
I don't care.
Okay, all right.
But they come in and they're hostile and they order everybody around. They're very, very angry that the gay man. Okay, so you're never gonna get gay men to be feminist enough to your liking. It just doesn't work like that, because they're used to straight men who are entirely terrified of them. Because in places like the Pacific Northwest, straight guys have bent the knee a long time ago. You're never entirely going to get gay men to be like that enough to their liking, and so they come in and they try their hardest, because they read people like Bell Hooks, who does literally say that, essentially, in so many words, like in her book The Will to Change, which is a must read for every MRA, because if you want to know the basis of why they decided to try to evangelize men into the feminist religion, that book is their single most revered piece of literature that's been written recently. And it was written in 2004. And if you read it, it is pretty much, you need to take over everything that has to do with men and turn it into a feminist space, because otherwise it's patriarchal and it harms them. So they're coming in to save us from ourselves. And I think they also want a space that is I think that they think that it should be easy or something. I don't know. I think it's also maybe because they don't have to deal with straight men hitting on them and stuff. There's a lot of different factors. And so
or they just want to control it because there are men here doing whatever they want, and they're not essentially considering what we want them to do. So it's like control.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure. God, what was I saying right before that? Okay. So there is that aspect of it, but and most of those people who are like that would support Antifa, but they're not necessarily involved. Wait, can you hear me?
Yes, I was just muting myself. I
Okay,
was just
okay.
muting
Yeah,
myself
it was
because
the
my
first.
dog.
Yeah, that's
No, my
fine.
dog was barking in the background. I didn't want him, interrupting you. So go ahead.
Yeah, so most of the people who go to and do that type of thing, they are not necessarily really involved in Antifa. They're not like really the radical anarchist people, because the radical anarchist people don't really even go out. They go to punk shows, and they have house parties at squats and stuff that are, if you are in the Seattle, Portland area, I mean, in Portland, there's a lot of houses probably, but like if you're in the Seattle area, there's a lot more of the Antifas out in Olympia, which is about an hour away from Seattle, which is where Evergreen College is, because you can you can rent out an entire house for probably less than $1,000, and so they cram 5 or 6 people into one of these houses, and those are the really, really bad actors. And in Olympia, everybody's just this kind of like queer intersectional feminist. It's not even an issue, it's like straight white men are just totally frowned upon. Like, you can't be even a dude, like a white guy with a beard. They just like won't even talk to you in a lot of these spaces, and unless you're like this like radical anarchist, blah blah blah. So the thing about the Antifas is they hate gay men. And it's real. I mean, I actually am making a video called Antifa Hates Gay Men. And it's clear. It's so obvious. And it has to do with, I would say, 3 things fundamentally at its core. Is they are, one, communists. Communists hate gay men. And that's just how it is. And there's a philosophical reason for that. That's not just like something that has happened throughout history. That's just happened to happen under the different communist regimes. It's because gay men don't fit well into the communist plan, because gay men aren't very cooperative. Gay men tend to look out for their own best interests. And I think it's just because gay men will always walk the edges of society. And it's sort of hard for gay men to fit in, because, it's hard to start a family. It's hard to even be around children, because people think that gay men are pedophiles. And they're, gay men don't respond particularly well to females trying to control them, or so when the communist movement is there, and it's like, oh, everyone has to work together to support each other, gay men are like, well, you guys never really supported me, I'm just gonna do my own thing. And and then when people start dying, the economic collapse is happening, and there's people who are considered counter-revolutionary. Gay men are a very, very high suspect of that. It's like, well, okay, we know that these guys aren't really into it. So that is a thing, and it's always going to be a thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, gay men tend to do really well in capitalist countries. So they don't have like women leeching off of them, and
decently well.
They get, yeah, they do decently well. I'm not. I think that I don't know if I'm right about this, but I think that I found, or I read somewhere, that gay men actually have it's a slight, but they have a slightly higher average IQ.
Yeah, a lot of people say
Straight
these
men.
things.
I've heard that, but I don't know if it's.
I've heard
I think I read
too.
that someplace.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what that's all about, and I don't really want to get in. Like, I don't really know, but so
Yeah, sure.
So there's the communist thing, and then the current communist movement is actually a feminist movement, and that happened.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that, because I was talking about that. So I'm doing a little. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm doing a little speaking. I'm going to be doing a little speech, a little introduction speech at the ICMI on the first day. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was how all of the political discourse, in particular with these groups that use identity politics as their sword and shield to fight against what they're calling fascist oppression, etc., are actually feminist organizations at their core. And the one argument, because I'm a minority man and I get called racist all the time, but the one argument I was going to start from is like one of my bases is to sort of like expose Black Lives Matter as a feminist organization, because it is.
Yeah.
It's a feminist organization first, it's intersectional, and it just happens to be using the bodies of dead black men to propagate itself and give itself platforms and attention and media coverage and support and so on. However, it also considers black men oppressors within its own logic, oppressors of the women. So essentially it's using dead black men to actually safeguard and protect and prioritize black women and give them privileges. And I think the same is true of the LGBT lobby, and I think it's what Antifa does. That's why people make the commentary that Antifa is surprisingly, white and male, but the people who are moving behind the scenes are usually women, and often women of color, like Yvette Falarca. She's the head of By Any Means Necessary, which is a group that is part of Antifa. Yeah. And she's like an Asian woman, right? So, as an example.
So, intersectional feminism is communist, particle board, obviously. But, what I was going to say about the Black Lives Matter thing, and this is a really, really weird thing. If you're ever really deep into that scene, I was in the San Francisco Bay Area for several years. And, I knew at least 4 people who published articles on everyday feminism, including editor. So it's like I really, really knew a lot of these Black Lives Matter radicals. I was at least connected to some of the wackier ones, like the really, really racist ones, the ones that just they live in Oakland, they don't have any white friends, those types of people. And they are so far gone down this rabbit hole of delusion that I have literally seen them claim that actually black women do get murdered every bit as much as black men, if not more, but the media covers it up because they care more about the deaths of black men.
Yes. Yes.
And that was just conjecture statement. But that's how absurd these people are. There's no basis. And so to get back to what I was sort of saying, Antifa is extremely, extremely anti-gay. And when the thing about that is that it used to be that people would be like, well, you're oppressed too, you're gay, you should be fighting for. They never say that anymore. They never say that anymore. There's never anything. They don't even pretend like, hey, you're gay, we're fighting for the same things. It's always more like gay men can be fascists too. There's all sorts of gay fascists. Look at Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, look just at like Asian reporters can be white supremacists too.
Yeah, no, but and they jump to that so immediately, and they are very, very, very quick to not just say, oh, it doesn't matter, but to use your sexuality as a way to attack you. And I was looking online, there is a ton of articles that are all like the history of gay men in fascism, and it's like why gay men are likely to be fascists, and there's a bunch of that. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm going to include it in my video.
I mean, I believe it's possible, but I don't believe it's likely. That's crazy.
Well, okay, and see,
I believe you. You don't have to prove it. No, I'm sure that's out there.
Yeah, but here's the third component. These groups are, so not only are they communist feminist, but they are extremely tied to Islam.
Oh yeah.
So, they receive funding from Islam to a certain degree. And
they want to sow this chaos.
Yeah.
And it's just like without, just like briefly, it's basically just like the stuff that Yuri Bezmenov said, that these people are useful idiots, and they'll do the bidding of people who will kill them.
Yeah.
They will be lined up and shot or beheaded, as the case may be, because, if you're like a communist that is, trying to protect the LGBT minus gay men, apparently, lobby, from the evil fascist orange man, and you do so, and then like Qatar is funding you because we know that Qatar funds lots of other far left progressive outlets like the Young Turks
AJ Plus.
and yeah, AJ Plus. Yep, exactly.
I think that the Young Turks might be funded by Saudi Arabia, and I say that because when
maybe
Alex Jones and this is obviously could be untrue. Don't you worry. Don't sue me. But, when Alex Jones confronted them at one of those conventions, I forget if it was like the RNC convention or what.
I know what you're talking about when Alex Jones confronted Shank.
Yeah, and
yes, and he mentioned Saudi Arabia,
and Shank lost it. He
lost it. He was like, I think the Buffalo doth protest too much. But I certainly know that the Young Turks are funded by a caliphate of some kind. I know that for sure. Al Jazeera Plus is blatantly that. And they're people who work on AJ Plus that have actually appeared on the Young Turks before. But I mean, like a lot of progressives outlets are being funded by these groups, and what they don't know is to what you were saying is that like if at the end of the day they're going to be dead because Islam's not going to put up with that shit. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So this isn't good, but.
Yeah, and gay guys are starting to slowly but surely realize that. Now, it's difficult because there is the gay church ladies who are there, and they are so committed to the orange man bad thing, and they are so committed to I mean, it's their job, and so it's like, oh, but he's gonna do these things to trans people, and man, gay men have been so suckered into this thing where they feel that the well-being of trans people is more important than their own personal well-being. It's this horrible Stockholm syndrome thing. Because the trans activists are so aggressive in calling people transphobic, and that's sort of really where it comes from. But so yeah, there's all these different factors. There's the Antifa radicals just like totally turning homophobic the second that they realize, or not homophobic, but being pretty clearly anti-gay as soon as you even if you are ever dumb enough to be in a conversation with them and to say, hey, I'm not a conservative, I'm a progressive. I mean, I'm a gay guy. I just don't agree with you. They'll be like, oh my God, you think that just because you're a gay guy, oh, you must be a fascist. It's like saying that by itself counts as proof of how awful you are to them.
Yeah.
And so, that's all I was really going to say about the gay guys and stuff. I do think they're starting to realize, but they don't have the resources to really learn about what exactly is going on. And aside from my channel, I don't even really know what would be the thing. I had to do all my research myself, and it took ages. It took about 3 years, so
yeah, well, I think it's going to be a really great conference. I hope that you're going to have a lot of fun. I think you're going to meet some really interesting people. Do you guys want to know who's going to be there? Because you said you weren't even sure. I can actually tell you.
Yeah.
All right. So that it's
so just to mention what we should be doing on the stream. I want to talk about who's there briefly, and then I want to talk a little bit about Overwatch because my audience has heard me talk about Overwatch, and we actually ended up playing together.
Yeah, sure.
But we won't be a super long conversation. So
no, we can definitely do that. Okay. So it's being hosted by the Honey Badgers. That's going to be Allison Tiemann, Karen Strawn, myself, and Hannah Wallen primarily. And then we're going to be there, obviously. But some of the other people that are going to be there, we're going to see Tom Golden, who's got a channel, I think, named after himself, or it's called Men Are Good. If you've never seen him, you should definitely check out his channel. He's been doing this a long time. And he has great content. Tim Goldich, who lives in Chicago as well, and he's a lot more of the a bit of a purple pill guy in a way to me. I mean, Tim Goldich is okay, but I just check out his content. That's all I'm going to say. Tim Goldich is all right. Then we have, let's see, Robbie Soav, Carl Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad, Marcus Meechin, that is Count Dankula, Chris Coles, known as Mr. Reagan, but his real name is Chris Coles.
Oh, I'd like to meet that guy.
Huh?
I'd like to meet that guy.
Yeah, Mr. Reagan's cool. I've had him on. I met him on a stream. I'm actually gonna get him on HBR. Hopefully next week or like this coming week, we'll talk to him. So yeah, Mr. Reagan is gonna be on again. Mr. Reagan. There's a lot of guys that are just sort of like, you know, like they're either consider themselves to be classical liberals, or you know they're just straight up conservatives or right wingers or libertarians. But again, if they're exposed to these ideas, you realize that like men's issues should not be a partisan thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is. But maybe people who are either unaligned, independent, right wing, conservative, center, or even center left might take an interest in these issues. So one would hope.
Yeah.
Steven Svoboda, who is another guy who's been doing men's issues for a long time. He does a lot of work on the circumcision question. Paul Elam is going to be there. Sean T. Smith. Diana Davidson, who is, she has a great series of videos regarding court cases, specifically around like false accusations.
No, she's
and
real
things like
good.
that.
She is real good. She's one of the, I would say, one of the few people that I really, really think it's worthwhile to call an actual activist as opposed to an advocate. And I'm not saying that people should not call themselves activists, because advocacy is activism, blah, 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 blah. So if you want to call yourself activist, absolutely fine. But she does something that it's like, I would be annoyed if she tried to say, well, I'm just an advocate, because it's like, no, you're doing a little more than that.
No, she does. Yeah, she does good work. And Deanna Lorraine, who is like the Red Pill dating coach, Don Dutton, Jonathan Taylor, who had a really great channel a few years back that was called A Voice for Male Students. He did a lot of work with essentially like the way that we treat men and boys in the education system in academia. Oh, he's awesome. I used to love watching his videos.
I would love to go see that. That sounds great.
Yeah.
What day is that? When is he speaking?
Well, he's going to be there for the whole weekend, but he's speaking on Saturday at about 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So, yeah. So then we have Harry Crouch, who was in the Red Pill. He works with NCFM, or National Coalition for Men. We're going to have Phil Cook, Alan Franson, who is a Chicago professor, retired. He worked at Loyola University. And he's a gay man as well, and he wrote a lot about masculinity, and realized when he was working in the masculinities that there's like all this feminist, like, you know, if you talk about gender of any kind in academia, you have to talk about it under the feminist lens, and he didn't like that. He thought there were flaws in that, and he got a lot of pushback, and so he wrote essays about, I think he called it the feminist fog, and essentially that sort of distorts the discussion around gender. And so Alan Franson, he's great, lives in Chicago. He's going to be there as well.
Awesome. When is he speaking?
He's also speaking on Saturday at noon. Okay. So he'll be there. And again, he's going to be there for the whole weekend. Yeah. We're going to have Tommy Sotomayor.
Yeah,
who speaks a lot about issues facing black men and the destruction of the family, fatherlessness, and that kind of thing. I think, again, absolutely crucial. You may not like his, maybe you don't like the way that he talks about, and I'm speaking to the audience in general, because there are people who have come to me and said, you know, the way that Tommy talks about the situation with the black community is abrasive, but I think that it's just a style thing. And this is such a way he chooses to do it. And, you know, Tommy, I think that there's a lot that he's going to get out of this that I think is going to alter his perceptions in some ways.
He's going to be saved.
I'm not saying that, but I think that I think that, like, you know, I think that, like, he's probably been working a lot within his bubble, because the guy's hardworking, but that just means he doesn't get exposed to other kinds of content. So this will probably I think he'll probably see some things that he didn't see before. Elizabeth Hobson, who is a woman that works very closely with Mike Buchanan, who works in the UK in the Justice for Men and Boys Party.
Yeah, I'm friends with her. She's been on the show.
Yeah, Elizabeth is going to be there. See the Quartering. So the Quartering wasn't going to, but now I think he's coming. But I don't know if he's going to be on any panels or if he's just going to be there as a guest. Because there are going to be people that are just there as guests, and they're not necessarily, going to be participating in any contest or in any sort of like discussions or whatever. There's also going to be Fred Hayward, who was also in the Red Pill movie. He was the story. You saw that movie, right?
Oh, of course, I've watched it.
Oh, Fred Hayward was the story of the man who he lost his son in the custody battle, and his wife
God, he played ping pong with
yeah.
him. Yeah.
Yes. In addition, we're gonna have some people from Comicsgate there. Micah Curtis, Just Some Guy, The Hat Man, Aiden Paladin. Aiden Paladin has been on our show many times, and she does a lot of work with sociological data. She's really good with the numbers, and I think again, she was someone who just wanted to talk about statistics and sociology, and then I got her on the show a couple times because I liked her content, and she's taken an interest in these issues because she can't shy away from the data, and that's actually just like her whole thing.
Yeah.
So. We got Janice Fiamengo, who is amazing. We got, let me see if I mentioned Phil Cook, Mark Angelucci, Mike Buchanan, Kursat Petgaz, who goes to the University of Southern California and works a lot with Title IX stuff. We got the Attractive Man, who's kind of an alternative to pickup artist content. I wanted to get different kinds of... he seems okay. I don't know. I mean, it's called it's called The Attractive Man.
Okay, I'm looking for it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I mean, he's pretty. From what I can tell, he's pretty heterosexual. But
I'm not assuming that he's gay.
No, I know.
He's a countering thing to the pickup artists. That doesn't sound very gay to me. That's not a very gay.
Well. Yeah, and when I say PUAs, I'm talking about guys that they kind of like wear a mask. They create a persona that they use to attract women, right? And the Attractive Man does it from a perspective of trying to how do I put it? Make people their best selves, which I think is the best way to do it. And I know that there's lots of other guys that sort of like are working on ways to attract partners that also use that method. But I think it's better for men because it's not about it's not about being not yourself, right?
Sure.
So I appreciate that more.
I just looked at him. He's very metrosexual, and I would say, I mean, he's definitely not bad looking. He's not really my type, but I definitely think that in terms of the visual aesthetic, he could help. Mm-hmm. He could help a lot of straight guys get women. Just with that, that's all I know is his looks. In terms of grooming and stuff.
Well, and the thing is too is that he doesn't do this alone. He has a team of like a few people, and he's got. It's a business. It's not just a YouTube channel. And also, the Attractive Man doesn't talk about men's issues. He was interested in this, and I have a feeling, and this is what my gut is telling me. I don't have any evidence to back this up. But I have a feeling that the main reason why he took an interest in this is that he suspected that his services, what he sells, which is essentially how to make men their best selves to attract a mate, I think he thinks that this is going to be a good place for that. And I think he's going to have a bit of a rude awakening when he finds that there's going to be a surprising number of women will be there, and he probably won't expect that. Secondly, a surprising number of men who are not straight will be there.
Yeah.
And thirdly, a surprising number of men who are not there because they have frustrations in dating or attracting women. It's mainly about the issues, because this isn't like some other I don't know, like if we were putting on something that was specifically about men's romantic problems, that's not what this is about.
No, not
So
at all. Yeah.
no, but you know, but while he's there, he might attend some other speaking things, and then like oh shit, like because he's going to be speaking at in the afternoon on the first day. I think that by that time he's going to be like, holy shit, this isn't anything like what I thought it was going to be. If I'm right, which I kind of think I'm right. So, but anyway, the attractive man, Bettina Arndt, who is a kind of a sex expert out of Australia. Philip Davies, who's an MP
Oh,
in
awesome.
British MP. Philip Davies is going to be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah,
When is he speaking?
he's speaking also on Saturday, right after, so at about 2 o'clock. Yeah,
Okay.
2 o'clock. And then we have, let's see, we're going to have a screening of the movie The Red Pill. Dr. Randercam is going to be there.
Oh, cool.
There's going to be like, let's see. I want to say that there was somebody else. Terrence Popp is going to be there. So that's just what I can think of off the top of my head. I've also invited lots of other people who are not going to be speaking but may show up. Vernaculus is one,
Uh-huh.
for example. Desiree, who has a channel called Just Thinking Out Loud. There's other people from Comicsgate, people from Gamergate. So they may not attend as speakers, but they are definitely interested in checking out as guests. So it's going to be the biggest ICMI to date, for
Okay.
sure, in terms of like the content. Normally these things go for 3 days, and we only have one stream, but this year there's going to be 2 rooms with speakers or panel discussions going on in throughout. So like whenever a slot comes up, you actually have to pick which one you want to go. You can't be in 2 places at once,
Oh, it's like
so
a
you're going to miss some.
Coachella style.
Yeah, or like if you go to like a music festival and there's like
Yeah,
multiple stages.
Coachella. That's what I
Yeah,
said.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Except for the keynotes. So we have the 3 keynote speakers are Tommy Sotomayor, Janice Fiamengo, and Sargon.
Okay.
So everyone can watch those. Tommy's going to be on the first day, Janice on the second day, and Sargon on the last day.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, that's basically it, and it's going to be a great time. And there's going to be more stuff. Actually, speaking of games, we're going to have a game night. There's actually going to be a game room. That's going to be like set up. We're going to have a room where we just do movie screenings, and we're going to show films like The Red Pill. I think that we might show. I'm not sure, but we might show American Circumcision
Oh God.
in that room. Have you ever seen that movie?
No.
Oh, it's brutal. And then there's
Yeah.
another one that I saw in Australia a couple years ago. It was about dowry laws in India. That was a really interesting documentary as well. It was put on by this woman named Deepik Bardwaj. She got it funded and set it up. She was kind of like the Indian Cassie J, you could say, that was trying to draw attention to these issues in India, but also really interesting. So like it's going to be huge. There's just so much stuff that's going on. And this is like the reason why we're all of us at HBR kind of overworked and stressed out, because I mean, me personally, like I am extremely stressed out because I have to speak, and I'm afraid, of how it will be received. I haven't really written much down yet. I got like a general outline. I hope people respond well to my arguments, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited. So
Okay. I am really excited too. As I said, I just bought my actual ticket a few days ago, and Spacepan got us a suite at the Sheraton.
sweet. I mean,
Yeah,
no pun intended, but
yeah. And yeah, actually, if you, I don't know if we have anyone rooming with us, but it's kind of expensive, so we kind of do want another person or two. And so just, I don't know, you're not going to remember that because you have so much going on.
Well, I'm going to be sharing. Yeah, I might be sharing my room with somebody too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that. Maybe if someone wants to attend, they could all, consider that. By the way, this has also been getting
spreadsheet for people
This is
for rooms.
Oh yeah. I'll Yeah, I don't know. Allison's organizing all that stuff.
Okay.
One other thing too that's worth mentioning is this conference has gotten more press attention than any other conference that we've put on before it.
Oh God.
And so this is also evidence that this is becoming a mainstream conversation. Now, the downside is that I'm pretty sure that 90% of the journalists interested are only interested in how they can turn this into a slam piece.
Yeah.
And there isn't a whole lot that we can do about it. I mean, like we can, because it doesn't except don't let them report on it. But I personally am under the belief that all press is good press. If anything, we'll just do what a lot of people have been doing lately. Always be recording. So we have our side, pull an Avi Yemeni if need be. So if we get interviewed and they try to cut it up, we'll have our own version, and we will probably be doing that. But this is definitely getting a lot of attention. I'm sure that the journalists are going to try and make this about the alt-right, the far-right, Trump, the election, and all this bullshit. Brexit, Boris Johnson, whatever it is they can cram in there. Incel, mass murders, so... But whatever, you just got to deal with that. I mean, you're going in the right direction when you're running into enemies.
You know what you should do? You should tell everybody that ContraPoints is going to be speaking. Then they'll leave us alone.
No, they'll. Yeah, really. Oh, jeez. This is it's amazing.
Okay.
Well, I noticed that. Speaking of which, I noticed that. Did you notice that this far left YouTube has been resurfacing? Not just ContraPoints, but I've noticed a resurgence on leftist content, like Three Arrows, like Vosh, who I mentioned. Like there's this Maoist. There's this Maoist guy that's been making it's like Maoist News or something like that.
Philosophy Tube,
Yes.
Innuendo Studios.
Yeah.
So there's a number of them. They call it
Sean and Jen. There's also been Big Joel. Like Big Joel, I've never seen him before, and he was making like videos that were like analyzing the Twilight Zone and like TV shows, and then he responded to the Red Pill, and he started making videos about PragerU, and he started making videos about
you showed I know exactly who and what. They call it BreadTube, and it's pretty clearly astroturfing. Like I
was wondering how much if these other groups, because you were telling me about how how ContraPoints is essentially like what's her name? What's the name of that? Cat Black. Like they're getting they're getting promoted probably by Google, but definitely they're getting backing from someone to sort of launch them into the mainstream. And I was thinking that our guys like Big Joel and Knowing Better, who we also did a video on, also getting that same treatment, because
I'm sure there is an actual there's two different news stories that I was able to find, one of which is that YouTube was allocating, YouTube itself was allocating $25 million to news initiatives, but then there's another one that came out that was YouTube is allocating $20 million to educational content. And
like Queer Kid stuff that actually got they appeared on TED Talk, not a TEDx talk, TED Talk, and they actually talked. Leslie, I'm not going to say they. She talked on a TEDx.
Isn't she a she? Doesn't she say she's a she? Did she change?
I don't know. I just accidentally said they, but not because I was trying to use a gender neutral pronoun, but rather because I was going under the working idea that Queer Kid stuff is not one person, but a group of people. And then Leslie is the face, or Lindsay is the face of Queer Kid stuff. But she had a TED Talk. That's an example. She actually made a music video, and it was like a pretty, I would say, a reasonably high quality one.
Wow.
So like this is not, I mean, for YouTube, not like compared to fucking, you know, the music industry, but like for a YouTube video. And it's definitely higher quality than her other content, because I think that Lindsay, right?
Yeah.
Lindsay started out, you know, independent and was doing her little thing, and she had very few subscribers. And
She might have had
now,
a small grant or something. I mean, these people don't
yeah,
do things by themselves. Like I'm very familiar with the far leftist activists. There's all sorts of grants for
yeah,
these things. It's really
I'm sorry,
easy.
go ahead.
It's really easy to get them. Like if you're
Yeah.
in San Francisco, Seattle, New York,
I mean, it is if you have the right politics.
yeah,
Right.
and the grant world it's very incestuous. They and there's a specific way that you get it. You look exactly at who they've given grants to in the past, and then you start thinking like, okay, what do the common threads have in this? And then you just kind of make a new version of that, and you apply and you write your grants correctly. And
Yeah.
there's people who their entire career is based not around making good work, but just being good at getting those grants with the application process. And they do the worst work in the world. I worked with a lot of them because I lived in San Francisco, and there's this big like performance art scene. And I swear to God, like I was in a bunch of variety shows, and I would always be like one of the only people that people actually liked, because I would always write out a script that would be like a scripted monologue. Like I call them theatrical monologues. And what I would do is I would make an electronic music soundtrack that would correspond to what I was saying. So it would be like dramatic or, you know, whatever. And in terms of that type of thing, it was pretty, I would say, non-cringy, but looking back on it, I'm sure it would be cringy now to me, my stuff. But man, the other people's stuff was just the most shallow, uninteresting, easy, like lazy. Like there's someone, you know, it was supposed to be like some abstract dance piece that like if you read about it on paper, it would be like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And then you watch it and you're like, that was nothing. He was walking around in his underwear with a sheet, and there was a little bit of paint, and then he pulled off his underwear and he dipped it in the paint, and then he put him back on. And
yeah,
now he made that sound like it was going to be cool, but it wasn't, you know. So
oh my God,
that it's really, really that bad. And so yeah, anyhow, I was just saying the seed money probably came from something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. I think that it seems to me though that they are definitely getting promoted, so that it's unfortunate. It just shows, you know, that what you're up against is the narrative, and it actually reflects the way the left does things. They believe that everything has to be like top down, right? So if someone has more subscribers, then to them that means that they're more correct. If someone is you know, citing you know, a feminist paper, then they just presume because they're citing it, it must be the truth. And it's all just like a means to an end. That's why if you ever notice, you know, sometimes leftists will argue that because their positions seem to be more popular, then it's a done deal. Like there's nothing else to discuss. Or if they get someone who is a figure who is prominent to agree with them on something, then it means that they are correct. You know, like, do you remember when I think it was the Justice League movie was coming out, and they were doing these interviews with actors, and they had Ezra Miller, who is a big social justice warrior, gay man. He played
the Flash. Oh God!
Yes,
oh, that queen. Oh, he's so horrible.
Yeah. And he was being interviewed next to Gal Gadot, who plays Wonder Woman.
I saw that. Sargon did a response to that.
Yeah, and Ezra Miller was trying to get Gal Gadot to look into the camera because they were interviewing each other, and get her to say something about,
she's,
you know, like
dear
just
white
taking
male,
down,
dear cis white male patriarch, your reign of terror is over, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Like they stick it to the cis het white male patriarchy, and Gal Gadot did not know what he was talking about. She was like, the what? The what? The cis what? And so she just said, to sexism or something like that, which, you know, okay, like a general statement, you know, against sexism, which she was willing, that was as far as she was willing to go. And he was just like so stoked because to him, she was making because it's Gal Gadot saying it, it's like he felt that now that that statement has authority because it's coming from someone in a position of power, because that's how the left sees everything in terms of people who have power.
And the only actor in the like DC superhero movies that people like actually like is Gal Gadot.
Yeah, I mean, I like Gal Gadot because she seems like a genuinely nice person,
and
like
she's the perfect Wonder Woman. Like she's the out of all of these actors that they have playing these parts, she's the only one that you're like, yes, that is exactly who should be playing.
She's quite well cast. I had my doubts at first because she looked kind of scrawny, but she's fine. She's perfect. Well, she's definitely better than most of the other casting.
Yeah.
So, but the point is, that's what they do. So I think the bread tube thing is the same thing. This is why it was so important for Lindsay to appear on TED, because if she's on TED and she makes the case for, you know, queer kids and educating queer kids, then she is validating her own actions, and she gets to use that against other people who doubt her. And the scary thing is that she wants this to become the normal, because they want to control people, and that means they want to engineer the way that children are away from their nature. And you know, this is actually something that, and then we can talk about Overwatch after this, but this is actually something that happened in this big long argument that we were having on Twitter with Takedown MRAs, who just jumped in there, but also with Christy Winters. Now, it's important because Christy Winters, she does a few things before you can start engaging her on the discussion around anything political, but especially feminism, because that's like her big thing, right? She says, first, she has a PhD. Yeah. So when she says that, she's telling you that she has more authority on the subject than you do because she has an education. And this is the reason why the left is so obsessed with education. That's why they get the line, educate yourself, because if you go and educate yourself, you're going to get exposed to their perspective, because that's the mainstream perspective, even if it's not right. And the only reason why it's considered the mainstream perspective is because they've essentially cooked the books to make it their perspective. And I can give you an example of that. Whenever we talk to her about feminism and the history of feminism and men's issues and everything else, she falls back on a series of talking points like, well, men are the ones that run, you know, government. Men are the ones that are the highest power position of CEOs. And we counter by saying, well, if men are in government, how did they get there? Yeah. Well, women voted them in. Well, why did women vote them in? I thought that men, and if men are in positions of government, are you saying that men in positions of government don't act in the interests of women? By that extension, by that logic, would you also argue that if we put women in positions of government, that they would also not, in turn, not do anything in the interests of men? Yeah. Of course, you know, logically, none of that makes sense. So what they do is...
What did you just say? They're doing the grunt work of leading society, even though someone else is in charge?
No, people in political positions of power, their power is not just power, like unchecked. They actually are only there because their voters share values with them and they want them to represent them in government. So in that regard, and this is something that we have to remember, the government is not an entity that has power over us. They serve us. They serve us, and we have to not forget that, because the moment you forget that, that's how you create tyranny, is basically by saying, well, we put them in charge. No, you ask them as a group to do things in the best interests of the country by the people who share your values. So when women, there's way more pro-life women than pro-life men, when women vote in representatives that are pro-life, they're not doing it by accident or because they don't have power. They're doing it because they are pro-life and they share values with that guy. Mm-hmm. And so the feminist argument that men they have positions in government, that means that they have power over everyone, and so men control everything. That's a frightening idea that if you actually believe that, because what that means is if you had positions of power, you would become a tyrant because you think that's what they are doing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's
And we
because
know that's true. We know,
yes.
like every like
Well,
feminist,
what
every
did
feminist that gets
AOC say? What did AOC say when people criticized her? She said,
you're just
"You guys
yelling
are
from the cheap seats.
exactly. I have power now,
Yeah.
right?" And that's a terrifying
Well,
thought.
and I think that, and this is, I want to come up with a good way of phrasing this that's not that sexist, but I think that,
Be sexist. It's fine. You're
well,
gay.
no, I mean, the thing is though, is that, I do think that women are naturally more authoritarian than men, and it's because of the
I
fact,
agree.
and it's because
Well,
of
it's
the fact that women need a hierarchy in order to gain power. Men
mhm.
can, traditionally, competed with other men, battled literally, like the best fighter became the king, and
Yeah.
men also go toe to toe with other men and realize what is actually at stake.
Mhm.
There's excessively few women that are willing to take men on their own terms, and they generally find other ways of getting into positions of power,
Yeah.
and they I think that it's always this thing where it's like, well, I have these other people that are willing to do this thing, and I and I don't, this is something I'd have to think about a lot more to really feel like I should be speaking about it, because I want to make sure that
Mhm.
I don't say anything that I don't truly
Well,
truly believe.
yeah, yeah. I think there's a safe way to sort of put it out there. If you take a portion of the population and you just give them things, but you never ask them to
Yeah,
be accountable or responsible,
yeah,
but you only frame their happiness in terms of what they are given, and you don't expect any obligation from them in return, or at the very least, you hope that they do something, but you don't ask them for it, you're going to create a class of person that is naturally going to feel entitled. And this isn't, I'm not making a sexist statement, because I think there are plenty of women that realize that, and Allison and Karen are among them because they've talked about it themselves, that when you feed into that, it's no wonder you treat them like babies,
yeah.
that you just give them what they want when they ask for it, and it's no wonder that you bring out the worst of that behavior. And meanwhile, men, you never give them anything unless they earn it, so they always know
Yes, yes. Okay.
that unless you spoil them. So
Yeah.
that's basically how that
Okay,
works.
okay. So I guess I can phrase this well then. I think that a lot of the time when women end up getting into positions of power, because they have been spoiled, and most of the time that the men that they were theoretically competing with, which in most cases stopped competing with them, and that's why they got to power.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the gay scene, where there's these women who just control everything, and it's because the guys just rolled over, like that's ultimately what it is.
Yeah.
The guys will not stand up for themselves, and women, and the women who do it, they call everyone misogynist who gets in their way, and then they start banning people. They get people banned from bars. In San Francisco, this crazy trans feminist got a guy who, he lived above a bar. Like, he was in the apartment
Mm-hmm.
building above the bar, and he was there pretty much every night. Absolutely, she got him banned from the entire bar. um I don't even know how, but she was a drama queen. She was getting in drama with
Yeah.
everyone. And
Yeah.
there was the crazy feminist that took over the Radical Fairy land in Oregon. She just bans everyone. She banned guys that had been living there for like 20 years. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they just let her. They didn't stick up for themselves. I think that the thing is with them is that because of the fact that it was so easy for them, what they don't realize is that the reason that men get power is because people think that they legitimately deserve it. And also, men realize that if they do a bad job, they could lose their power. and they are forced by that high stake to, you know, be as fair of a leader as possible, whereas these women just end up, you know, like the CEO of YouTube, who's just this awful person. And it's seemingly because they're like, oh, well, so I'm the leader now, so if you don't like me, I can ban you. Okay, cool. And then they do. And it's just like,
it's like
that's not how it works.
It's like so many things that has been said. Like Jordan Peterson has brought up the idea that, you know, everyone's talking about rights, but no one's talking about responsibility. My wife and I talked about it, and she made an interesting point that you cannot have authority without responsibility. So if and by extension, you cannot have responsibility and not have authority. How can you be responsible for something and not have authority over it? But you see, this is the clown world we live in now. We give women authority, but we don't hold them responsible. We make men responsible, but we don't want to acknowledge that they actually have authority. So there's because they consider that making men responsible, which this is absolutely true. It's right now, it's happening. Think about it. The welfare state is mostly paid into by men, and mostly women benefit. So we're giving women stuff, and we're making men pay for it, and they're not even seeing them. And it doesn't matter if those men are interested in those women or not, but that is where the bulk of this money goes. So, I'm not making a case as to what should be done about it. I'm just saying that for now, this is like what is happening. This is the reality we live in. And what has happened is that we have been so concerned, and feminists do this because that's what they want. They want to make sure that women get more. They want, they want more pay. They want more services. They want more free stuff. They want abortions. They want healthcare. They want, but none of it is balanced with, and this is what they're willing to do. This is how they will, reciprocate that. No, they won't. And men just have to give, because that is ultimately who was going to give. And they shouldn't. They not only can't have any authority, but how dare they even do so? Which is why they say, well, here's a bunch of old white men deciding what women can do with their bodies, for example.
It's so untrue.
It's true.
It's okay. I very much agree with what you're saying. I forgot what we were saying before this. If there was
I was talking about we could just get into Overwatch, but I was talking about the way that leftists see everything is in terms of power structures. And it plays out in every single thing that they do and how they talk about things, etc. So Christy Winter's example, first she tells you she has a PhD, then she uses academic studies that are cited, often cites herself, and uses that as evidence to prove her claims. And but here's the thing, this is the only way they work, but it's the structure that they built that they then pull from. For example, Christy Winter citing herself is actually a great microcosm for what I'm talking about. If you are a person that wants to talk about gender issues, feminists will demand, if they even entertain you, let's say you want to talk about gender issues, but you're not using the feminist lens, you want to talk about it from a non-feminist perspective, okay? Feminists will demand that you prove all your claims with papers. The problem with that is that most of the papers, if not all of them, are feminist papers. Because they're the ones that decide what gets approved and what doesn't. So the stuff that goes into journals, science journals, and it gets printed, and the stuff that gets approved or peer reviewed and basically gets the go ahead is all stuff that conforms to their worldview. And I'm not talking about stuff that's actual science, because obviously when you're actually in hard sciences, it's either true or it's not true. You either proved it or you didn't prove it. But in these kinds of science, like the humanities, it's all about does it replicate agree with our worldview, because our worldview is like religion. It's like this exists already, so it either conforms to it or it doesn't. Therefore, if you go into, and look, on Honey Badger Radio, we've done a lot of shows where we just look for feminist papers and go through them, and they have insane stuff in them.
Yeah.
But because they conform to the appropriate worldview, they get peer reviewed, they get printed, and they get the go ahead. They're considered good to go. And so they basically create thousands of approved papers on the subject, because they know that the more citations they have, the more true their arguments become. Because it's a top-down thing. It's all about authority. So they have the authority, and so they just say, we have the authority because we have all the papers. And therefore you can't counter us because where are your citations? Well, it's like there are no citations, or there aren't many citations for what I want to talk about, because nobody's going to peer review and approve a paper that's not feminist.
Yeah.
So like,
or if you do put together the citations, I've done it in tons of videos, like where I have all the information, including directly from the people's mouths, directly from, like articles about this, and then showing the actual numbers, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, look, it's all in this video. And they're like, YouTube isn't a real source. It's like, oh yeah, because you can't communicate things in audio-visual format. Totally sounds legit. And then they're like, no, but it's just one person's perspective. No, it's not. It's a video full of other things, but they won't watch it.
Yeah. No. But they will dismiss it. But like, even then, they have all these like fail safes. So even if you did have all of that, then someone like Christy Witcher still gets to say, well, I have a PhD and you don't. So I mean, it doesn't.
Well,
it's all about.
I don't even acknowledge her existence.
No, I know. I'm using her. She's just an example.
Yeah,
but my point is that this is evidence, or this is like the trend. Like whenever, this is why BreadTube is becoming a topic, because
this is why there's literal channels that it's like they're being paid to as PR. Well, not okay. There's definitely channels being funded, like ContraPoints and stuff is clearly funded, but there is channels that seem to be being paid to act as PR agents for the other channels. Like there's that guy Faraday Speaks, who was also the person that they featured, that they said that he went down the alt-right rabbit hole on the New York Times. And then of course Natalie saved him. He was all saved by BreadTube, ContraPoint.
Yeah,
but he's full of crap. He seems like he's an actor. And then the other one that was really, really, really bad. And the funny thing is that I was mentioned in this. Was there's
I know who you're talking about. The guy,
Quentin
I can't remember his
Review.
name. Yes. And he basically just talked about how ContraPoints is great, but never really explains why.
And he was like, it's the only thing on YouTube.
Yeah.
It is so good. And if you don't think so, you're dumb. And the reason I like it is because I'm a fat, ugly neckbeard, and I guess that I like things by fat, ugly neckbeards until ContraPoints came along, and it's just like, okay, that video was the most pathetically bad video by anybody's standards. Like, it's not even like legit fans of ContraPoints would be like, okay, this is a stupid ass video. Like what you gotta give me something, you know what I mean? Like you have to but he couldn't even do that, that video within days got over 100,000 views and 10,000 likes. But wait, I want to look at it right now, because it was like this viral sensation. And hold on, I just want to see how many where it's at right now, because okay, now it only has 114,000 views. That is unnatural. You don't release a video that gets 100,000 views over the course of a few days that all of a sudden gets only 14,000 over the next 2 weeks. That's astroturfing. And I know, I don't know for an absolute fact, but okay, we do know for a fact that Media Matters pays people to troll the internet. Like that's something that we absolutely know for sure. And one thing that happened that was very, very suspicious, and this, okay, so ever since I started criticizing media, not Media Matters, but ContraPoints in particular, I've acquired a lot of very, very persistent trolls, and they're, they haven't admitted it, but it seems very clear that some of them are being paid, and they do really, and there's some really weird things about them. Like there was one that she essentially stalked me for several months, and she was this like 15-year-old girl, because I actually chatted with her because after she stalked me for so long, I demanded to speak with her, and she did, and she was like crying. Like it seemed like she really, really didn't want to do it, but she felt compelled to prove that she's a real person or something. And and then when she wouldn't really answer my questions, and then right when I got to be like, okay, so I want to talk about why you started stalking me, and she's like, well, just something to do, and I'm like, no, that's not true, because what I remember is that you came out and she made a profile account on Twitter, a Twitter account, and it had my name in the bio. And the first couple of tweets she made, and I've screen capped this, is that she's going to be dedicating herself to proving why I'm wrong about ContraPoints. And that was the entire purpose of her account. So I brought that up, and I'm like, so yeah, what I remember is that you started because I criticized ContraPoints. Now I want you to explain that. And she was like, I gotta go, bye. And she hung up. And she's like, my parents. But it was like she had been talking to me for like well over an hour. It was very strange. It was kind of like maybe, she was actually in the room with her boss, and they're like, no, don't talk to him about that, or something like that. But I don't know that for a fact. But it was like, okay, there are some really, really strange things. Like, for example, there's a video that is of Jordan Peterson. It's a clip called why pronouns aren't about respect. And it's something that I have watched a number of times, and I've shared a lot on my Facebook timeline. However, I have never included it in a video, but I think it's a perfect way of saying, like the people that demand certain pronouns and how it's this narcissistic, entitled, ordering people around. He says it very perfectly. And
yeah, it's not about respect.
No, it's about
respect is earned. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
So that video, she created in her YouTube profile, she created a playlist, and it included some of my videos, and it included that video in the playlist.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so strange because it's like, how did she know that I've shared that a whole bunch on Facebook? Because I've literally never even referred to that clip, like that exact clip. It's not even on Jordan Peterson's channel. But the thing is that, the social media companies collude with each other. On Twitter, I'm shadow banned. Like if I put my YouTube account into the website function in Twitter, they will automatically shadow ban me. And so it's like, okay, if this person is some weird paid troll that was hired to like stalk and gaslight me, like she was obsessed with saying I was crazy and all this like really weird crap, like is she trying to creep me out by saying like, oh yeah, I know what you watch and share, I know where you got your ideas from, or something? Like it was extremely bizarre. But that's a little bit less that's just guess type stuff. Like that's just stuff that's weird. But what was really weird was the other day, so there was this troll, this new troll that I've acquired. And see, one of the things is that like I troll them back, and they don't realize I'm trolling them back because they think their goal is to get me to waste my time, right? But my goal is to learn about them. And so I will engage with them. And it got to this point where one of them said something, like I think either they had said something about Soros. They're like, you keep calling Natalie propaganda, but we know that the Koch brothers are propaganda, and it's people like them who fund the AEI, and they fund PragerU, and that's propaganda too, and blah blah blah. And I was like, actually, did you know that the Koch brothers and George Soros work together now? Like that they have joined forces? The response that they gave to me in that was something to the effect of, oh, well, I guess that's probably a good thing, because George Soros has been working to de-radicalize the radical left. Because, he got involved in Black Lives Matter, and it's been a long time since Black Lives Matter has done anything particularly radical. And so maybe then, now that he is funding Antifa, he's going to make Antifa less radical. And maybe the Koch brothers are going to de-radicalize the radical right. And it was like, nobody thinks that. Nobody in the world actually thinks that. That's so obviously the reverse of what is true. The fact that you would even pretend to think that is so bizarre to me. So,
yeah. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was muted again.
No, it's okay.
Kind of multitasking a bit, but I was getting another coffee. You get out of your way. I'm sorry.
So yeah, no, but like that's just about the astroturfing. It seems very clear that something very fishy is going on. That's my
point. That's what I think too. They seem to be like promoting, like they're doing what they can to sort of like boost these other channels while also like
making it look like there's like we don't even like YouTube could just add a whole bunch of views on certain videos that are not even real. Like they could easily.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
So yeah. Do you want to talk some about Overwatch and then close it out?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So okay. So we played Overwatch. What?
And
like
you even met my favorite person to play with, the 12-year-old kid that I vaguely consider like a second son, my son or something. He's gonna be like a pro gamer.
He's good. I mean, he's good. Yeah. Because I'm not good with the sniping. I mean, I've been improving, but with a controller, I can't. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are going to say PC Master Race and stuff. It's really hard to do with a controller, but I like playing on a console because I like hanging out in the living room and being able to put on a big screen TV and relax. It's like a thing I do at the end of the day and early in the morning with my coffee a little bit.
Well, and if I had it on my computer, I'd be checking my email all the time.
Yeah, it'd be really distracting. But I also want to.
I do that anyway. But
yeah, I use my computers just for work, so I try to not use it for anything else because I think it's really easy to just like download a bunch of games and then your machine's going really slow, and I want to make sure that I'm using this to make good shows for Honey Badger Radio and stuff. So
yeah, but like okay, so you're the only person from YouTube that I've ever played Overwatch with. There's other people who have it, but they don't have it for PS4. And it's such an interesting universe of socializing because it is actually a very diverse selection of people who play the game. Like there's quite a few females who play it. And quite a few gay guys, people of all races, and it's interesting to communicate with them. I don't know how many like Overwatch friends you've ever really made.
So like I've been playing Overwatch since it launched, and the only reason, so I don't get into competitive shooters at all. The only reason why I started playing it was mainly because it had that visual style that I found really appealing, in terms of like the way that it looked. And I thought, wow, because I'm a big fan of fighting games. And so essentially Overwatch is like a first-person shooter and a fighting game.
Absolutely.
In that there's all these different characters and they have different abilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that about it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I love about it too. And I think that that's actually what attracts such a broad audience of people as opposed to a game like Call of Duty where everyone is just like a soldier and it's all very grounded. This is more like they're like these kind of like superhero characters, right?
I definitely think that one of the so I actually made a whole video called why do so many females play as Mercy? And this was back before Moira was even in the game.
I was gonna say that actually my wife and I met her in Canada, and we were doing a long distance relationship for a while, and when I got Overwatch, I think that she either bought it or her father bought it where she was staying, and we were playing it together, and that was actually the thing that we did was played Overwatch together. And she did play Mercy, like she played a ton of Mercy in the beginning,
Yeah.
She still plays Mercy sometimes now, but not as much. But she was definitely one of those girls.
Yeah, and the thing that I came to was that, like, first of all, Overwatch just has a lot of females on it in general. Now it's not only Mercies. There's, a ton of women who will
Yeah,
play other characters. I
there's a
would
couple female tanks, there's a couple of damage dealers, and
Yeah, I would say it's usually mostly the tanks and the healers. That's just from my experience. But I mean, I've had some female friends. Like I play Sombra, who's one of the 5 hardest characters to play. Period. And I've known a female Sombra who is quite good. And she's considered a DPS. She's there's no character that's really like her because her main power is her ability. She gets rid of the other characters' abilities by hacking them. But
yeah, she's got stealth and she hacks people. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing that I really, and this I drew a little bit from James Damore's work, the essay that he wrote to Google, is that I think that because it's a team game, that it's a social team game that's cooperative, I think that attracts females because of that, because women tend to thrive and enjoy environments where do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's because of that. I think it's because it has a flexible learning curve. So games like Call of Duty are extremely competitive, and it's all about how good can you shoot. Overwatch has a much more forgiving curve. So if you're someone who's not really good at first-person shooters, but you want to play, this is one of the reasons why Mercy is popular, because it's not hard to use her.
Yeah.
What?
I'm good at first-person shooters.
I know you are. I'm not saying that you're not, but
That's the problem.
No, I know, but I'm saying that it's got an accessibility thing to it that I think it's not just for women, but for men who don't normally play first-person shooters too. And so there is that, and then the other thing is that I do think that on some level, female characters does help, because women do tend to they do tend to gravitate towards games. They tend to self-insert in their media, and men don't. Men tend to be we're okay with whatever, as long as it's appealing in general. So men are okay with playing female characters or male characters. Females tend to gravitate towards female characters because they do have, and that's why you get feminists that are crazy about representation, because they're taking that self-insert and they're turning it into an authoritarian thing, where they're like, well, we need to make people change things to suit us, or to suit other people. So they express concern for people who never asked for this stuff by saying, well, we need more women of color, we need more we need more men of color, we need more gay characters, whatever. And I think that's what I think that's the main reasons why there are a lot of women that play Overwatch, and sort of not your typical audience of FPS gamers.
Yeah. I think that definitely the combination of the teamwork with a diverse role.
Yeah,
I mean,
and the last thing is one other thing that other first-person shooters don't do. Because there was the game that Overwatch gets compared to the most is a game called Team Fortress 2.
Yeah.
And Team Fortress 2 also had a cartoony art style, and you had all these different classes. But the thing is that the Team Fortress guys, they weren't really individuals. They were classes made manifest. So there's the engineer, the medic, the tank, I think he was called. Or he might have been called something else. But the heavy, that's what he was called, the heavy. And they had personalities, but they didn't have names, and they didn't have they were kind of really general. This guy serves this purpose, this guy serves this purpose. In Overwatch, they tried to create a world and lore, and the characters they each have their own gimmick, and they had their own look, and they have their own personalities, and so people attract themselves to them because they get all these different characters. And I think that is another thing that attracts people who aren't typically into FPSs, as well as women, because they do like that. Oh, I get to be this person. So like, it's not just, oh, I'm playing the engineer because he's the best guy to use for this match. It's I'm Torbjorn, and this is everything about Torbjorn is like, it comes with that. So his the way he talks, the way he moves around, the things that he says, like there's just more personality, and I think that attracts them.
All right. So regardless, aside from gameplay, and the only other thing I want to say about gameplay is that I did send you a screenshot on the PS Network of with the time that I got into Diamond. My friend looked at my stats, and I for the last hour and a half that we had been playing, I scored 84 percentile of all of the Sombras on the PS4 network. So proof positive that I'm a pretty decent gamer, because if you're 37, 36 years old, I don't know if I was 36 at the time, and yet you can play better than 84% of all gamers on PS4, one of the hardest characters to play, that means something. God damn it. And that was a point I wanted to prove to myself. I wanted to prove that I could get that good. But
that's good.
Aside from that, I do want to mention that I think it's so interesting to be able to play Overwatch and become friends with a lot of the younger people, to learn about what they're interested in, because I have a bunch of actual friends that I talk to regularly. And the only way, you met only two people that I was playing with, one being that kid who he's the only like young person that I play with. He's very, very nice. He doesn't really talk a whole lot. It was during the day when you and I played with him, so he was talking a little bit more, but usually
Sure.
Oh, and I was playing with him last night. It was really funny. We were actually in a comp match and we were doing like all good. And then all of a sudden we started doing bad. And then all of a sudden he left the game. And a few minutes later, he wrote me and he was like, "Oh my God, my mom is actually rude. She unplugged the TV because which is weird because he's 12 now. But like last year, like, I don't know what I mean. I guess they must have caught on because he would stay up till like 5 a.m. sometimes. Like that was the weird thing about him. Like we met him. There was like 5 of us playing, and we were in a group, and he was the extra person, and he played Tracer. Tracer's a really hard character to play.
She is,
and he did a really good job. And we were like, "Hey, you were really good," because he requested that we stay as a team. And he was like, "Hey, you were really good. Do you have a mic? Do you have a mic? Oh, we only like to play with people who have mics. Do you got a mic? Oh, okay. Time's almost up. Well, you were really good. See ya." And then right at the last 2 seconds, he turns on his mic in his little voice. He's like, "I have a mic." He was like 11. So I sent him a friend request, and then he would always want to play with me. And the thing was, he would be up really late. But like other than that, it's mostly like teenagers, young adults that I play with. That other guy that we were playing with who was all drunk, I don't really know him that well. I've only played with him a bit for a few months.
Sure.
But like what I find really interesting is like most of the young people don't really care about politics. Like most of them, they don't.
Even though obviously Blizzard does. Like there's no doubt that Overwatch was made with some degree of progressivism in mind, and not necessarily in the kind of aggressive anti-male way, but definitely in a pro, everything else way. And so it's clear. But most games, the Overwatch community, and I've seen a video about this, and I think it's absolutely true at this point. Overwatch has been out for a long time. There is still an active community, but I think a lot of the people who are like the most interested in playing it as because they're really competitive and they want to like get better at that, they have moved on to other things like Apex Legends or Player Unknown or Rainbow Six or something. They've moved on to something else. And what's left is, because the Overwatch community is not as busy as it used to be. I know that for sure, because when I started, it was really easy to get into a game.
It started thinning out when they introduced Brigitte.
Yeah, I think it was mainly when like competitors started showing up that were trying to do the same, like Apex Legends and Fortnite and stuff. That was basically the beginning of the end of Overwatch.
Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, people still play it. But what the issue is, because I see somebody asking what kind of women are playing, and somebody else said gamers and gamer girls and NB player gamers don't always pick games for the reason that you stated. Well, what I was going to say is that what's left in the community are two types of people. One are the people who still like Overwatch, like myself, and I just like it as a game and I play it for fun. Or, you know, I can be competitive as well. But I like it because I think the game is good and I think it still has life in it, you know. And two is the absolutely insane, obsessive community that is from Tumblr that wants to ship everything, and they're using it as a means of, you know, realizing their weird fantasies about Overwatch. So they're not really playing it as because they're interested in the game, but they're more so because they like the world a lot and they want to. It's the same way they might have enjoyed Doctor Who or something else.
I don't ever encounter those people. Like,
yeah, because they don't. They don't.
They probably don't even play it. They probably just drop.
They don't play it that often. They mostly like talk about it. So basically, what's left are, you know, what's mostly left really in terms of people who are actually playing the game are the people like us, and then there's like Smurfs, and that's basically it.
So what I've noticed, and this is just been a really cool thing about it, is that because of the fact that, you know, it is still a very meritocratic game, like you're either good or you're not good, and I mean almost all video games are going to be like that. There's like the women that are attracted, I think that they were hoping it would become this like feminist thing, but then the women who like actually go and stay playing it are talented, you know, women who strive for excellence, who are very smart. And those women are generally not feminists. I've talked to so many different, you know, females that are just like cool, and they get really annoyed with whiny, you know, like we have some teammate that is like this like whiny, and they're like, oh god, she was awful, you know. And and I really like that, and I've totally red pilled so many of like my male friends, especially, and some of the female ones, like definitely I don't want to say but I don't even want to say that I red pilled her, because she's just never really liked feminists. She's like, I don't know, it just seems like they just kind of really hate men, and it bothers me. Like, I like what they say that they want, I'm fine with, but like it doesn't seem like that's what they actually want. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. Don't worry, that's not just you. She's like, okay, cool, because that's what I thought. And you know, but I have had one, and this is such a funny little story. I had one altercation with a feminist that I actually used to play with not regularly. And because I was telling this guy about my YouTube channel, and this, oh god, this woman is so awful, and she lives in Portland, of course. And I was trying to be like, I'm like, oh, I'm explaining it. I'm like, yeah, I criticize feminism a lot. And she's like, oh, well, that's kind of weird for me because I'm like a feminist. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you mean when you say you're a feminist? And I'm like, and she was like, well, like equality. And I was like, well, that's not what I'm talking about when I criticize feminism. I'm criticizing, like, if that's what it means to you, then that's fine, but I'm criticizing the actual ideology and the people who definitely aren't interested in equality. And she was just like, and then this other girl joined that I'm friends with, and she was just listening, and I was like, you know, trying to talk about it, and the feminist girl just was silent. And I was like, okay, so I do my best, but you're not giving me anything to go off of. I don't really know anything more to say. And so we just played, and then after it was at some point she left, and the other female was with me, and I talked, and I was better friends with the other girl anyway. And that girl was like, is it just me, or was that really weird? And I was like, no, that was weird. I was like, she's like, yeah, she wouldn't even say anything. Like, she was just sitting there, like, acting like maybe she disagreed or something, but we couldn't really even tell. I'm like, yeah. And she was like, no, and that's messed up, because like, I know that you're telling the truth, because my uncle was falsely accused. Like, I guess she lives in LA and she had some ex-girlfriend that totally made some crap up about him, like either domestic violence or raped. And she's like, yeah, and it still follows him around. And we all know it's untrue. There's nothing that he can do about this. And I was like, oh yeah, it's completely unjust. And people won't even acknowledge that this can be an actual problem. And she's like, oh, I know all about that, you know? And so I was like, okay, that's cool. And so I was able to, you know, help. Like, I don't want to say that I've red pilled that one woman that much, but I was able to at least give her some solace that it's like, no, this is not, there's a lot of people who care about this out there. It's just hard to find us.
Yeah.
And she knows what my channel is. I don't know if she's ever really watched it, but then what was funny though is that she would still play with that girl and with some of the guys, with the girl's friends. And so one time she was in a group and I joined her group, just decided to join it. And then the feminist was there with some other friends of hers. They live in Portland. And I had probably already unfriended the feminist because I was like, you know what? That was awkward. I'm not going to like this. That's why I don't play Overwatch, is to get in these conversations. But somebody else had wanted to hear about my channel. And so I felt it was safe to tell him about it. And then the feminist just happened to join. So I joined to play with the girl, and then the feminist was there, and I just like there. I'm like, oh, hi. And then after a while, one of the dudes just said out loud, he goes, feminism is for everybody. And I was like,
what?
Yeah, seriously. He's just like sort of said it, blurted it out. And I totally left. And, you know,
that's hilarious. I would have laughed.
Yeah, no, and then I eventually talked to the girl that I wanted to play with, and she was like, "Whatever happened with that girl, Lizzie? Like, what did you ever?" I was like, "Oh no, I unfriended that. I don't. And she's like, "Are you sure?" Like, it's because it seemed like I don't know. She's kind of weird. Like, she was all weird about that, and like I was, you know, and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, I mean." Fuck that girl, she sucks. Like, I'm not interested in, like, I don't play Overwatch to get in arguments with feminists or anything. And it seemed like it was going to approach that territory. So I was just like, nope, I'm unfriending you, not interested, period. And
yeah,
she's like, yeah, but you ever talk to her again? And I was like, no, not really. I don't know. Maybe like one time I like joined a group or something, and she might have been there. And she was like, okay. Because she was wanting me to be like, yeah, I joined a group and they were like feminist, but I didn't even want to, you know, like really get into that. But like, it was so annoying.
Sure.
But that was the only time. And it was people who live in Portland. You know what I mean? So
of course.
it's like, but it's so funny like that. It's like, what, you're going to like be exclusionary by telling me, you know, it's like, by the way, you're not welcome here because feminism is for everybody except you. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like, so that was the only real story that I definitely wanted to finish with. But we've been doing this for a while, so maybe we can end the stream pretty soon.
Yeah, that sounds no, it sounds good. I should get back to my dogs and they've been barking a lot.
I do want to ask you one or two questions.
All right, sure.
Well, thanks for joining, everybody. And remember that I'm going to be starting a fundraiser for my ticket to the ICMI and everything, because, you know, I'm going to be cutting it kind of tight. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to have a new video soon, blah, 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 blah. And make sure to share this around if you found it interesting. Okay, bye.